That was the weirdest thing ever. Oh. I cut out for a second. Well, I seem to be here, isn't it? Isn't it? Aren't I? Do I want more information about my privacy? Why not? Click that. Go away. Bye. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? I can tell you to fill the silence because there's a little bit of a lag in what people type, so I can't see anything yet. It is rather dreadful here today. It's raining, and it's been raining. It started last night, and it hasn't stopped. So if it is not snow, it seems to be a bit rainy here. And there's been a lot of rain recently. This spring has mainly been rain. I myself am rather well, though, which is a good start. I tried something different today. Not only are we in a slightly different location, but I have some items here closer at hand. But I also tried, I'm going to try and move my chair. This is going to make a bit of noise, I'm afraid. Not bad. I tried to do this in such a way that I am more level with the camera, but now I have the feeling I'm a bit low, isn't it? Like it looks weird. It looks weird? Yeah, that looks weird. Let me see if I can adjust it a tiny bit without knocking everything over. I don't know if anything changed, but I like this. I like the perspective. Anyway, June showers make July flowers. Well, I will say that it was incredibly dry here, and the province of Alberta is known for its dryness, but clouds of dust were billowing by in front of my country. What? No, sorry, it is early still. In front of my window. So there was this the only thing I was missing was tumbleweeds. But anyway. Yeah, that's a good point. Someone says, I wouldn't overthink it. As a photographer, I'm often overthinking composition. Yeah. I like this a little better because usually the camera is lower. So then by definition, I'm high, but the perspective is high. I think this is more, my eye is pretty much straight in line with that camera. So I'll now stop pointing at you. I'm so sorry. Yeah, British Columbia. I've heard that. I still have to go there, British Columbia. I've heard very good things about it, but I haven't actually visited. I can tell you, nothing new to show you as to pens. I am expecting something, pen-wise, for which I am rather excited, but I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. So, what do we have here? I'm ready for the Chinese to start churning out the retractable fountain pens already. I want more options outside the vanishing point and the Curidas. Yeah, I kind of look forward to seeing retractable pens. You do see that the Chinese pens that I think very traditionally used to be cartridge converter. Pretty much everything you bought cartridge converter. It is interesting that there is a development now towards piston-filled pens. You do see, I think, more and more piston fillers. And they're even experimenting with, I can show you that because I have that here. It's entirely likely I showed you that last time, but I can show you now anyway. Even vacuumatic systems you really start to see now, right? So this is this was a Wing Sung. And I always forget the numbers because I always want to say $6.99, but that's the big one. Oh, it does say $6.99. That's why I wanted to say that. Which is, for all intents and purposes, a Pilot Custom 74. And this does actually have that vacuum filling system. So it is interesting to work on that. I also know that they had this, the Conid. They had a Conid system at some point. So it is interesting to see how that will progress. So I wouldn't actually at all be surprised if at some point there will be retractable nib fountain pens coming from China that are probably quite a bit more, let's say, a bit less expensive than their cousins from Japan or Europe, because of course Lamy has their Dialogue 3. All right. Good question. Is it maybe something triangular I'm expecting? No, it's not. Now we're all going to guess. No, it is not triangular. Do your worst. All right. What else do we have? I think it's part of the tradition. Tell us what tea you are drinking. Well, I'll tell you. You'll find this interesting. This is an Assam that was scented in port barrels. If that sounds familiar, that is, Ellen, because you sent that to Aziza. She alerted me to its presence. I went to your contact. I'll make this sound very mysterious so everyone thinks, whoa, that's really cool. I went to your contact in Halifax and I said, yeah. So I got some, and it is absolutely wonderful. I am not really one for flavored teas, but with this Assam being scented in port barrels, you can smell the port. And it has flavored the dry leaves. They smell a bit like berries. And it reminds me almost of a type of candy, a type of hard candy we had as I was growing up, which is kind of sour and acidic. It has a very slight tanginess to it. It's fantastic tea. So thank you for this. You're the cause of that. It's wonderful. Okay. Yes, the Pen BBS 355 bulk filler. That I think that's it. That number sounds familiar. That's the one where they had the bulk filling system. Now, I did at some point have a discussion, sorry for the noise, with Francis Goossens, who designed the bulk filler. And I said, I don't know, it looks to me like they're doing something with your filling system. And he said, oh, yes, let me have a look. He said, well, I can already tell that there is a crucial component missing or something. So that was interesting. But yeah, here you have the Conid bulk filling system, right, which I think is a beautiful system. It's nice and complicated, but it does have a very nice ink capacity. So you have this I know there's a lot of reflection from the window, but I don't know how well I can mask that. Maybe if I hold it a little lower, no. So that piston seal actually gets secured into the back of the pen. You see, because now this rod comes out. And then that's there. That rod also acts as a stopper for that secondary ink chamber. So you have a lot of ink here, a little bit of ink there. You can take that out. You can fly with it. This is dreadfully clean, by the way. I need to clean this better. But that's roughly the idea. And then you keep screwing this, and then you have that basically a piston. Very nice system. I like it. Some people think it's overcomplicated, and it is definitely complicated. But I will say this. Those pens are incredibly comfortable. Also, I really like their nibs. I will show you. We're just hanging out, right? So I'm just going to do some stuff as I'm awaiting further questions. Let's clip this on. I'm going to get very strange and blurry. Oh, that's not it. This is the camera. Now, what is the camera? Where is it? Oh, it was there. Oh my God, I can't see it. There's all these little black holes in there. Okay, should I see a doctor about that? Anyway. Look at that. Ew. I love that. This is just a fine nib. I really like it. It's a very nice fine. But I always like those. It's not really concentric circles, but that's what it reminds me of. Very nice. And shiny. Okay, so yeah, so the bulk Pen BBS, sorry, they did that too. Yeah. Can I say what continent the pen is coming from? North America. Hello, Aaron. Nice to see you. Yeah, you see, that's the thing. So someone says, I do love a good complex filling mechanism. Yeah, I mean, me too. There are people, I fully understand people who would say, yeah, but this is Like it's so, why not just have a piston filler? Well, the ink capacity on a bulk filler is bigger, but why not just have a one-way shutter valve? Why not just have an eyedropper? That's the biggest ink capacity. Yeah, an eyedropper, you also require the extra part of an eyedropper. For a bulk filler, for example, you don't need anything. You just need the bottle of ink and the pen. I have never had issues with it. It takes a little bit of fiddling initially to figure out how this works. But I mean, once you realize how it works, it's very, very simple. And then it works really well. So I think it's very nice. And I've always been a fan. They are very expensive, but you do get a pen that is really well made. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Why does everybody prefer bigger nibs? Because there's more to look at, I think. Hooded nibs don't work for me. If I want a hooded nib, I may as well use a ballpoint. This is my personal opinion. I'm not saying you should feel it. I'm saying for me, a hooded nib has very little attraction. You can barely see it. And that to me is just it's not very exciting. So for me, a fountain pen with a larger nib doesn't have to be gold, can also be steel, but a larger nib, I've always found that more attractive personally, just because there's more to see. I think it's kind of fun. So if you look at something if you look at the whole progression, 1 second here. Yeah, just take out 3 random pens. But if you go through the entire progression from number 5 to number 6, and then number 8. I should just put that in, shouldn't I? Yeah, that's a really fun thing to me, and I like the bigger nibs. It's something you grow into, and I found that with a lot of people who use pens for a long time, they start to gravitate towards bigger nibs, and some people don't, and that's of course completely fine, right? If you like small nibs, obviously that's nothing wrong with that or anything. But that's the reason for me. Another thing that I like is that the number 8 nibs from Bock, which is what's on a Conid, for example. Sorry, this is not a Conid show, but I just have this out, right? They have an ebonite feed, and ebonite feeds have very good flow properties. So for me, that's always a lot of fun too. You typically do get a nib that flows really well. All right. Have you heard that Pelikan Germany is assessing their pricing strategy in North America? Yeah, no, is the short answer. I'm not surprised. I remember this has happened a couple of years ago, and I remember that Lamy has done a similar thing. It does happen, and often prices increase quite a lot. I will immediately be honest and say I forgot if this was Lamy or Pelikan, but I remember at some point prices went up by something like 35%, which is pretty substantial. And I remember that Pelikan has done something like, I don't know if it was quite that high. I want to say that was Lamy, but I have seen those kinds of things. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, you reassess your strategy, but pens are becoming such a luxury item, and people remain willing to pay exorbitant prices. So what used to be a very nice $500 pen is now a $1,000 pen, and what used to be a luxurious $1,000 pen now is $2,000. At least this is my feeling, and I fear that just keeps going up. So it's very complicated, and I don't know if I really like that as a development, but the community keeps paying, so there won't be any change, right? People want their pens, and they will pay. And of course, there are people who do not, right? But I find it a little discouraging, especially to people who are new to fountain pens, who start to shop around and think, oh, that's a really pretty pen, I want to buy that, and then it's $1,200. I mean, and I don't always think those prices are justified. I think a lot of 4-figure pens should be $500 or $600 in real value. Anyway, this is my opinion. I shall refrain from bitching more about this. Hey there, is any Indian pens today? Well, I have the pen that I also showed last time, which might be the only Indian pen I have right now, but I will gladly show it again because I really like it. The Oh, this is actually pretty good lighting. You can actually see the green. Nice. So this is from Tamanuri Studios. Again, shown it last week. But this is a Ranga body. Someone identified as number 5. Yes, number 5. I saw that online too, so that's good to know. Thank you. Nice job. Again, a little hard with the face, but I try. You can see there's the green there, right? And at the end, I think it's very nice. So this is a big pen, very comfortable though. I've been playing a lot with this last week, and I really find it very, very comfortable. It's a very, very fun pen to play with. But that's the only. I think it's the only Indian, and now it is Indian with Arushi, which is an Asian technique done in Poland. So now I guess we have 3. Anyway, it's become nationally a complicated scenario. Pen diplomacy, as the kids say. When one seeks the extraordinary, one doesn't settle for the ordinary. True. Maybe that's why we have these complicated filling systems like the Conids and such. My God, that thing really is dirty. I didn't clean that properly. Nasty. Okay. Each pen has its charm. I would never give up the pens I use with a converter, but I wouldn't give up my vacuum filler either. And our own hooded nibs and double broads. I love them all. Yeah, that's how it should be. And I wasn't trying to suggest that let's make this really clear. I wasn't trying to suggest that if you do like hooded nibs or something, or small nibs, that there's something wrong with you. Obviously not. It's just, I think overall is a preference, but there's nothing wrong with you having a different preference. It's very important, in fact, that you do that. And I also agree that a good cartridge converter can be a lot of fun. And if nothing else, they're easy to clean, right? Much easier to clean than, say, a piston filler that you can't disassemble. Now, the Conid pen, you can buy the tools. I would really appreciate it if they would just give you the tools with the pen. But then on the other hand, some people have multiple Conids, and you would end up with whole hordes of tools, rooms full of tools. That may be a little much too. By the way, I can now reveal this artwork. Yesterday, Aziza asked me to draw Lord Windermere for her, so you've seen it here first. The claws are a little disproportionate, I'm afraid, but I'm not an arts major, you know. So, hope you sorted. Ah, yes, the Indian cookery book. Yes, yes. I have Madhura Jaffrey, huh? I'll check that out. Jeffrey or Jeffrey? I don't know. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, I'll check that out. Yes, a couple of people made suggestions, and that was very welcome. So there will be, as soon as I have some, I'll show you. Maybe there will be a future episode. Oh, this is a very good follow-up question to the nib size issue. So nib size does not affect performance. I'm just taking a second to think. I would say that absolute nib size, so let's say going from number 5 or sometimes even number 4 to number 5 to number 6 to the only one with number 7, as I said last time, is Oldwin that I know of, but then number 8. No, I wouldn't say that the size of the nib, say number 6 to number 8, affects performance. So I wouldn't say a number 8 nib will write better than a number 6 nib, period. I think it's more of an aesthetic thing. Now, having said that, specific aspects of the geometry of a nib could affect performance. If you have a bigger nib or a smaller nib, that doesn't really matter, but it has very long tines, then it's typically a bit more flexy because it's just then very nice and thorough. Wow, narrow or thin, although I do like thorough. Hashtag thorough. Make it happen. Very thin and narrow, then there will be more, typically a bit more springiness because those tines are so long and thin, right? As opposed to something that's much more stocky. But at the end of the day, of course, it is the tipping material that really touches the paper, and that's often the same metal on all those pens. It used to be iridium. I won't say that I don't use iridium so much anymore because I think it got very expensive, if I remember the story correctly. But some sort of, like some similar type material to iridium, a very hard metal. And that's also why there need not be a difference between a gold nib and a steel nib because they can have exactly the same metal for the tip, and that's what actually touches the paper. Now, having said that, yes, a gold nib can be a little bouncier, can be a little softer than a steel nib, but I have seen steel nibs that are softer than some gold nibs. It's very hard to make sweeping generalizations there in that specific aspect. But to answer your question again, no, number 8 will not ride better than number 6. That's really not. I really wouldn't look at it from that perspective. That's a really good question. Thank you. Do you take requests for guests on your live vid podcast? I could. The only problem is I'm doing this through YouTube, and YouTube is not good with guests. That what Eric and I did that worked, but that was basically that's a different story because that is additional software that basically records. I don't know why I say basically. That is software that records a Skype conversation and then streams it live as it's going on. But I don't. So this is just YouTube itself, and that's a little different. Yeah, that's also a good question. I'm just checking because I see a strange notification at the bottom here. Your device needs to restart to install updates. Well, let's hope that doesn't just magically happen. What else? Interesting. He said the pen comes from North America. To me, that sounds like someone based in North America has it now for review, but that the pen is not necessarily a North American pen. I can neither deny nor confirm anything, but that's wrong. Consternation. Although I do have a couple pens from David Parker, aka Figwood on pens. Joost Appelboom sent some pens to David, and David is passing them on to me. It'll be a little bit of time before they'll be here. So in a way, I hope I pronounced your name right, but Kiara, in a way, you got it. That is something. However, that's not what I was talking about earlier. Confusing, isn't it? So confusing. What could this be? Well, when it gets here, you find out. Screamo has come out with a triple. Oh no! I overscroll again. I don't. You really. I'm not an idiot. It's not easy to scroll because there's a bit of a lag in all the comments and you scroll and then you go like 5 pages down. So Screamo has come out with a triple broad nib. Leonardo has a 3-time music nib, and Aurora has an Italian Naginata Togi. Do you think this is the result of the Italian pen markets getting saturated? Well, I think maybe. I kind of look at these things like I think you continuously need to strive to innovate in any type of industry. And when you think about it, with fountain pens, there's only so many things you can do. The pen is a tube. You can make it triangular. You can give it facets. You can make it a square. All of these things have been done. But that's the problem. They've all been done. There's only so many shapes. I'm still waiting for the Chiliagon shaped pen. Look that up if you don't know what that is. That would be amazing. That would probably be $1 million pen, but it would be an interesting concept. I'm half joking. Well, if you can't really innovate the shape of the pen, I mean, people can play with it. Like Sean Newton has the, I completely blank on the name right now, but he has a sort of triangular pen, which I think looks quite cool. I want to hold one at some point. So you can vary more with that, but it will remain a tube. And whether it has 3 facets or 12 facets or 1,000 facets, it's still a tube. Then what can you innovate? Material. Okay, well, everybody wants arco-celluloid, and you can come up with some really cool acrylics, but how many acrylics do you need in the world? I'm not trying to be negative, but I mean, what's going to be really revolutionary? You might say, oh, that's a really pretty celluloid. Oh, that's a really lovely acrylic you've got there, you know? But it's just going to be another acrylic. At the end of the day, it's just another acrylic. It may be very pretty, but it's still an acrylic. So that's not really the solution either. So then you have, I think, filling systems. How about coming up with a really revolutionary filling system? Well, when is the last time that happened? Conid came out with the bulk filler, You've had the vacuum filler, which is not really new. That's been done before on vintage pens. You had the really, I think, really convoluted but cool Schaefer snorkel filler, where we turn it in a little metal tube, going and you put that in the bottle of ink, and you have sort of vacuumatic filling. It's a cool filling system. Again, it's very convoluted. There's a lot of moving parts that can break. But then what do you have? Well, if all of that's gone, it's not the pen itself, it's not the material, it's not the filling system, and it's not, I don't use this in a pejorative fashion, but it's not a gimmick. Like, for example, ST Dupont has a pen, and it has a USB drive in the back, which you can pull out. Yeah. Okay, or you have pens that have capacitive tips you can use on touchscreens. It's fun, it's gimmicky, can be very useful. I'm not ridiculing it, but I mean, at some point you will run out of that too. Like you don't have any more of that stuff that you can innovate on. Of course, now I have to show you the Speakeasy, right? Speakeasy, big pen, Visconti, which has an alcohol compartment, right? Speakeasy, so you can put a shot of your favorite booze in it. Well, all of that's very gimmicky. I don't even drink, so I just like the pen. But Prospector. Sean Newton. I think it's the Prospector. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I got it. Then what can you really evolve? Well, the nibs. You can come up with fancy nibs, and you've got guys who do this. Mr. Nagahara from Sailor, he passed away, but he did a beautiful job in coming up with these incredibly exotic nibs that are ridiculous. 3 nibs stacked on top of each other, or a nib that writes fine one way, and if you turn it upside down, it's a triple broad, these kinds of things. But that's real innovation. And now you have people doing that again. Ralph did it for a while, but Ralph seems to have disappeared from the face of the earth, so I don't know what happened. What's that? Oh. And then there is Monty Winfield, who's doing something very similar with creating all these different kinds of nibs, which I think to a degree are recreations of the Sailor nibs, but he also does things that are completely new. So I think this was an incredibly long answer, but it's a complicated question. Why do you get these nib innovations? Well, I think that's because that's where the market's being pushed. People want to have innovative, fancy new stuff because that's how humans work. But if you can't do it in the pen, the body, the filling mechanism, the gimmicks, well, then maybe the nibs are the way to go. That's what I think. That's what I think. Do you care for titanium nibs at all? Yeah, I have a few. I don't have that many, but I have a few. I can show you my favorite. Sorry, I'm just cleaning up a bit because of all these pens out. Let me leave that. Cone it out to clean it. My favorite one is here, which looks like it's anodized, which is interesting because the average titanium nib, I'm just unscrewing these so I can show you, and I'll put the loop on again. Ew, it was painful. I'm working on this sound. Ew. Something for the professor I'm working on. Okay, the final time I'll do that. Okay, this is what a normal titanium nib looks like. You see that has that dull gray color, which I actually really like. I think it's a really cool look. I don't know why. This happens to be number 8 nib, but anyway, it doesn't matter, so that's no. But I have a titanium nib that's anodized on a Stipula Etruria Magnifica, which I'll show you next. And that's probably my favorite titanium nib. As you can see, it's gold colored, so they must have anodized that somehow. Very pleasant writer, because this is a fine, you see, F, Titanio, F. But it is, it offers really nice flex, but it snaps back really nicely. So you have a nice line. I don't push it too hard, but you have a nice bit of line variation in it as you write. So I like them. 2 things to be aware of. One is that they have a specific type of feedback. I still need to look into this. I don't know if the tipping itself is titanium or if they do use other tipping. But in any case, all the titanium nibs I've used have a specific type of feedback that you don't get on steel nibs and gold nibs. that's why I think the tipping is titanium. I don't know if that's hard enough to withstand the. I know it's a hard material, but I don't know if it's hard enough for the continuous pressure. So I don't know. Someone correct me. I think it is titanium. Look it up, please. The other thing is titanium is something that can spring. With a gold nib that's flexy, at some point you get this sort of feedback that says, okay, don't push this nib any harder because it's going to spring. And then it's just like this, right? If you know that, like this, then the tines don't snap back. They're in V shape. But once that happens, that nib is basically gone. With a titanium nib, that can happen. It bends out of shape easily, and then it's forever. It becomes a weak spot. So if you can push them really far, but at some point, without warning, they will stay in that shape, and then you're gone. Why is this nail so weird? This is anyway. Okay, so that's that. More about Pelican prices, Germany too. Yeah. I think it's just like how the market works, right? You just up the prices a bit. So I'm just reading this question. Oh, nudeless. I think it's supposed to say nudeless, but the nude disappeared. I had new nudeless triple tail because that's the nudeless nib, right? The triple tail. That I put a sparkly ink in and it clogged up. I had to take it to the nearby store to clean it, and now the ink just runs out the nib. My guess is that but you have to be careful. My guess is that the nib and the feed are not far enough into the section, and that there is a gap somewhere that causes the ink to leak out. And sometimes also make sure that when you look at it's very hard to do this because I have to bend both my one hand in a really weird angle. If this is the feed and this is the nib, they need to be tight. And if there is a gap like this, that's also a bad thing. So make really sure that alignment is proper, that things are pushed all the way into the bag. But if you push it into the bag, be careful because you don't want to push the nib so hard that you bend it, right? So gently hold it, nib and feed, hold them like this, not like this, okay? Because then you can bend something. That's what I would try. If that doesn't work, it's a nudeless pen, throw it out. And then buy another one. Because that's, yeah. Is the benchmark fountain pen still the M800 Pelican? Would you say it's a Visconti Homo sapiens? Well, for me, neither. But I think a lot of people find the M800 very comfortable. The M1000 is a bit big for some people. Hairdressers need to open up. But the M800 works for most people, it seems. Yeah. Have you had any issues with your Arushi pens in terms of Arushi aging? Not really. I use them quite a bit. I don't necessarily always have an Arushi pen inked up. Right now I do. I have this Danny Trio Mikado. I think the Arushi aging is a bit of a matter of kind of the charm, though, right? I mean, if it actually comes off, that's a different matter. But the fact that it discolors, that's kind of what it does. And I mean, I can show you my Emperor. I think is the best example of that. This is a Danny Trio Genkai. And I show you this because this has the vermilion Arushi. And this is what a brand new Namiki Emperor looks like. But this is what my Namiki Emperor looks like. So it's clear, I think, that Arushi has discolored over time. I don't really mind that. To me, that's kind of the attraction that you have something like that that's actually used. And I got it this way, for the record. All right. Okay. Why are like printer ink and like fountain pen ink, why are they so expensive? I don't know. I think it's also a matter of demand, but I think in the case of color printers, that is just a smart trick. Like printers get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, but you need to make back your money as a company. So you make the ink cartridges super expensive. I find it very hard to believe because I remember back in the day when I had my first inkjet printer, the cartridges you got were massive, like huge cartridges. And those became like 60 milliliters, 50 milliliters, to the point where they're now 10 milliliters, and they're the same price as the big old ones. So, I mean, I think that's just a matter of people want to make money, and to a degree, probably the same thing with a fountain pen company. They sell you the pen, and then they try to convince you that their ink is the only ink you should be using. But then, of course, you keep buying from them. And even if it's just $10 a bottle, every time you spend your $10, right? Or your cartridges are ludicrously expensive. Bottled ink is way cheaper. What's my most used pen? I don't know if I have one. I really try to use them all and rotate them. And there are some that I'm very fond of, like the Conid is inked up a lot. This is absolutely true. I've really taken a shining to the Cross Darth Vader. Not because it's Darth Vader. I don't whip this out every time I think, oh, it's Darth Vader. It's just that I find they hit the nail on the head with this one. The nib is fantastic, and the metal makes the pen very comfortable. A bit like you feel it is metal without it being excessively heavy. And I just love that nib. And I guess I may as well show you the nib up close then. Nib made by Sailor, right? So it's a good nib and just a really pleasant user. So I've been using this one a lot for everyday writing. I find it very comfortable. Okay, we have the triple tail. Yeah, we talk about that. Oh, that's interesting. That ties into what we were just talking about. My Lamy 2000 seems only to play well with Lamy inks. I even tried Iroshizuku. It's, yeah. So, in principle, right, in theory, every fountain pen company wants you to use their ink. Montblanc even says that, at least said at some point, if they find traces of an ink that is not Montblanc in your Montblanc, then they void your warranty. But don't they have a 1-year warranty now or something? I mean, like, oh, well, what a huge issue. Hashtag sarcasm. So there is no reason that I can come up with on scientific grounds that Montblanc pens can only take Montblanc ink. Waterman pens can only take Waterman ink. You could raise an argument of, well, yeah, but these inks are formulated in such a way that the flow properties of the ink optimally match the ink demand of a certain fountain pen, the way the feed is constructed. Yeah, that could be the case. That could also not be the case. Think of how many ink manufacturers there are. Not that many. And it turns out that a bunch of companies get their inks from the same source. I'm not saying Waterman and Montblanc do, but some companies do. So there, I just don't buy it. I've had other inks in non-X brand inks in X brand pens, and it works fine. But this was just theory. Your issue is the Lamy 2000 only seems to play well with Lamy inks. Well, many of the Lamy inks I have used are a bit on the dry side. So I don't know if it's a very wet writer. Iroshizuku inks are wetter and are lubricated. So if you like a dry writing experience, I don't know if you do, but if you do, then indeed Lamy ink would probably be better than Iroshizuku. I don't know what you mean by plays well only, if that means like it really doesn't flow, or if it's too wet or too dry, or it clogs up or anything along those lines. A really good clean, if you haven't done it, can be a good idea. A Lamy 2000 can be disassembled. I'm pretty sure I've done a disassembly line video on the Lamy 2000. If you have access to an ultrasonic cleaner, it might not be a bad idea to put the nib and feed in an ultrasonic cleaner, get it really, really cleaned out, and then try again. But yeah, worst case scenario, you're stuck with Lamy inks. Not necessarily a bad thing. It would be fun if you could use everything, though. If that doesn't work either, there might be an issue that is a bit more structural, and you might want to consider sending the nib to a nibmeister so that they can have a look at it. You wrote in Dutch, so don't forget that Appelboom has Annabelle, who is a local Dutch nibmeister. If you're in Belgium, then I don't know what to tell you, because I don't know anyone in Belgium. But you could try you're close to Appelboom anyway then. Just an idea. Just an idea. Now, yeah, another good suggestion for Peggy with a noodle is heat setting the nib to the feed. Yeah. You can find resources on that online, and I think that is a good idea. Yeah, if it doesn't work. Sorry, I meant to indicate that Pelican is trying to reassess, is reassessing to decrease their prices in North America. That'd be interesting. Huh. Fascinating. I would pick up a couple of $5 M1000s. Anyway, so what does nib size affect, or what difference does it make? So now we're talking, I think, again about not fine, medium, broad, because obviously this speaks for itself, right? A broad nib will write broader than a fine nib. That's the whole point of broad versus fine. I think we're talking about number 5, 6, 7, 8 again. I really think it's aesthetic. It's just a visual thing. It's just a bigger nib. Like, for example, take an Amiki Emperor again. Like an Amiki Emperor has a number 50 nib. They have their own system. I'll show you a number 50 nib next to a number 5 nib. Here's a number 5 nib. Here's a number 50 nib. So there's a difference, right? Can we see the difference? Can we all see it? Yeah. So one is a bit bigger than the other. But I think that's it, though. It's an aesthetic difference. And both of these pens write very nicely. So one is a bit more exclusive than the other. Okay. Any thoughts on celluloid feeds? I have never given it thought. I don't know if such a thing exists. It very well could. I'm not necessarily aware of it then. Yeah, I don't know. You see metal feeds, right? Armando Simoni Club started to do, I think, airplane aluminum feeds. Yeah. Why not? As long as it conducts ink, I suppose it's possible. I suppose celluloid could work too. There are plastic feeds, so why not? I'm glad the nib size questions or the answers are helpful. Good. Speaking of Eric, hope he's well. Yeah, he messaged me yesterday. I think he is. Yes. I help run a cheap fountain pens group and I often recommend your videos. Thank you. Thank you. Are there pens that you regret selling? Not really. I kind of regretted selling an Omas 360 and then I got another one. But beyond that, no, I don't think I've really regretted anything. No, and I'm very pleased with what I have. Soon a mystery will be added to it. I just keep fueling that. Technically, what is the most advanced fountain pen to date in terms of materials used, filling system, and nibs? Oh, I have no idea. I think that really depends on how you define that. Like, I mean, again, you could look at something like the Armando Simoni Club, the Gladiator that did, not the Medio, but the big Gladiator that did. Basically, a reproduction of the Omas Paragon in arco-celluloid. Well, that has arco-celluloid. It had a piston-filled pen. It had an aluminium feed. It had a gold nib. So especially the aluminium feed was a bit fancy in that. That could be fancy. But then I don't know if that's fancier than any other pen. So I really don't know what the most advanced pen would be. I really think that depends on how you define a large number of parameters. Yeah, the video quality. I'm trying, but this is a fairly new Microsoft Surface I got, and I'm very pleased with it as well. Given that the world we live in also depends to a large degree on online meetings now, I'm very happy I got this right before all of that started because it's been very helpful. Yeah. My only issue, because people have suggested, why don't you use this for your reviews then, is that as you can see, I can't make this focus up close, right? So I can't show off a pen properly, and I can put that loop on, but then you have a tiny field of view. So I don't foresee that happening. But anyway, thanks. I'm glad that it works. Yeah. All right. Slowly scrolling. That's good input from Chiara too there. For me, nib size affects my writing angle. A smaller nib has less of an angle than a bigger one. My 1911 small writes wetter because of the angle than my 1911 large. I'm just trying to picture what we mean by angle. You mean the angle of the nib to the paper, I guess, but like a bigger nib versus a smaller nib? I've never experienced that. I'm not saying it's not a thing. I'm just saying that I'm thinking I've never experienced that. I have to think about that. I have to run some experiments here. It shall be done. Okay. I would love a triple broad for under $100. Yeah. I don't think there's one. I'm thinking I don't think I've ever seen one in steel. So you're looking at the old Pelicans, the Pelican M800, M1000. They were available with triple broads, but not under 100. Yeah. I think 3D printed pens will be the future. Yeah, I think people are going there already, and I can see the benefits in that. Right? You could do interesting things. I know I've shown it before, but I mean I have a 3D printed pen, which is very large, but it's an actual piston filler. It has a number 8 nib. It's quite nice, made by a gentleman called William Shakur in the UK, and it's, in my mind, a very comfortable pen. The looks are not for everyone, but it doesn't really post. But it's I find it quite comfortable. But again, not for everyone, but I mean, you could do all kinds of things, right, with 3D printing. I would love a micarta pen. Well, they exist. Twisby had micarta, and Penprique, Penprique on Instagram makes micarta pens. Does he also have a website? No, he doesn't have a website. Penprique on Instagram. Okay, this is a micarta pen that he made. I think it's very nice. This one also has a number 8 nib. In this case, a number 8 Jovo. I've only shown you box so far. I guess we need our loop again. Number 8 Jovo nibs are quite nice. They're a bit stockier. They're wider than the Bach nibs, just in the actual nib, the shoulders of the nib. Yeah, it's a prospector. Yes. Thanks for pointing it out. Gold is not bouncy. It is soft, but not bouncy. It is all a question of the right alloy. Okay, so a gold alloyed nib can be bouncy, and it can also not be bouncy, right? Like a 3776 gold nib is not bouncy, for example. At least the music nibs are not bouncy. What else do we have? How do you smooth a scratchy fine nib with an architect grind? Well, is it fine or is it an architect grind? A fine architect, I suppose. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing you always do, right? You will need to polish it, but an architect is a very specific type of grind. So this is not meant in an unpleasant way, but make sure that you are using it correctly, right? Because some architects, because they're so sharp, right, they are very sensitive to how you hold them and how you angle them to the paper. And under some angles, they can be very unpleasant to write with, but if you hit the right angle, then they can be very nice. So I would make sure that that's the case. If it's absolutely certain that you're using it in the proper way, you have the right sweet spot, etc. Yeah, then it's a matter of polishing the tipping like you usually would, I would say. Of course, you could also send it to a nibmeister and get that done professionally if it is scratchy. But also bear in mind that the finer something is, the scratchier something typically is. There will be more feedback because there's less material to polish in the first place. So a fine architect is an interesting combination. Typically, you create architects on broader nibs so that you have a more maximized line variation, right? I'll show you an architect grind to explain what I mean. Here's one done by the Toronto Pen Company, and this is what I mean by it's a very specific grind, right? This does not look like, so it's very hard to hold this still, but it's not a typical grind, right? This is what I mean by it's very triangular. So if you put this, like if I dig this into the paper with this end first, well, it is going to be scratchy because it's very pointy, right? And at that end. So that's all I meant to say. All right. Yeah, it's a Pen BBS magnetic filler. Yeah, I missed out on those, but I should probably check them out at some point. TWSBI Go, yeah, that's also an interesting filling system. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good suggestion. People looking for replacements for the Mont Blanc Midnight Blue, the old formula that was iron gold, which is not anymore. If you want that, try TWSBI's Blue Black. Same color and all the waterproof qualities. That's pretty cool. I should check that out. Thank you. Well, I did really like that as an ink, yeah. And yeah, maybe smart pens. Yeah, Mont Blanc, I think, already has something like that, where you have paper, then you did it, well, you digitize your writing. So I think that is also something that we will see more of in the future, because it's just becoming more and more important to do digital stuff. Okay. I like this. Leonardo and Santini are experimenting with ebonite. Penader is making unbreakable resins. With the exhaustion of global celluloid stocks, are the Italians in the midst of a resin arms race? Probably, and I also think that resin kind of is the way to go. Celluloid is very pretty, but it's difficult to make, and it's very flammable, right? Which is why you don't see it that much anymore. But in my mind, there's nothing wrong with a good resin. I know everybody's always full of the Arco celluloid. Yes, it is absolutely beautiful, but then I've also seen resins that are fantastic and really attractive. So I think that is a way where people will go. Yeah, and I think that will become more and more common. And of course, you could also look at more exotic metals for pens. I mean, you see quite a couple of titanium pens now, which is also cool. And I like that. I mean, I have this small one. Pen, I'm talking about a pen. I have this small one that's Enzo XS Pocket Pens, all titanium, which is a really comfortable pen to use. So I really enjoy, even though it's a pocket pen, I really enjoy it. And I think that is also a way to go. Like, look at more interesting metals. And some people make, I've seen lapis lazuli pens, which are also exotic and interesting. But why not? I think that's where people will go. Is there a number 8 size nib which is half the length of a normal number 8 size nib? I think that might be why some people aren't comfortable with the size of number 8. It's not the width, it's the length. I've never seen it. Again, the Jovo number 8 nib, I guess I can show them to you side by side. So I have to dig it out again. And what do I have? It's number 8. Here's number 8. If you see Bock and Jovo side by side, you will notice that the Bock is a little longer and the Jovo is a little stockier. Can you see? So on this here, I don't know if this is mirrored, so I don't want to say left or right, but this brown one, that's Bock, and then next to it is Jovo. Jovo a little shorter, but a little stockier. I've never seen anything that's number 8, but that's only half the size. Of course, when you make pens, you could dig it in deeper. There are people who, I don't have that out here right now. For example, Schoen Design, that's not number 8, that's number 6. And he puts the nibs in a bit more deeply. So does Franklin Christoph. And the result of that, of course, is that the nib becomes shorter, right? It's just deeper, embedded more deeply in the section of the pen. I hope that makes sense, right? This versus this, same nib, but one will look shorter, right? All right. I suppose you could do a 3-nib system where you can retract different nib sizes. Yeah, but I think that's a very cool idea, and I think it would be really cool if you could also have 3 different ink reservoirs, but that might be a bit much. But yeah, I think something like this, you could have some sort of revolver type pen where you can just, you have different nibs. And I think that type of innovative thought is where the pen community will go, because again, there are only so many things to do. So these kinds of ideas, I think that's what really matters. Yeah. Okay, what else do we have? Does the failure of Omas and Conway Stewart indicate that fountain pens, barring Mont Blanc, are just unsuitable for the Louis Vuitton Rolex market? Yeah, it depends on what you want, but I think there are different ways to approach how you make pens. You can make pens that are pretty good, but that depend entirely on marketing, which I think is what Mont Blanc has done. They're good pens, but I don't know if they're exceptional pens. I mean, they're good, but you know, it's a resin pen with a piston and a nib. I've seen more of that, you know. I don't know if the quality of Mont Blanc was higher than the quality of Omas, for example. I think in pistons, it absolutely was. But I think nib-wise, Omas had an edge. So it depends on what you want. Do you want to sell 1 million of each pen you make? Or do you want to make pens that aim for people who really love to write? Well, depending on what your goals are, you may have different strategies for your company. I do think that, I mean, bear in mind, a lot of people I found buy very limited edition Mont Blancs to put them on a shelf. They're collector's items, but not user items. And I think most Omas pens, and definitely the Conway Stewart pens, were made to be used. So again, it's just a matter of what market do you aim for? Do you aim for people who just want to have a white star on their pen so they can put it on the table at a business meeting? Or do you make pens for people who actually want to write? And I think there are some companies that really do that. They really make pens for writers. And some are in between. Armando Simoni Club is a bit of both. They have some people I'm sure use them, but I also can see, sorry, I can also see how there's people who really collect those pens to have another Arco, but never actually use them or ink them up. I don't know if that's an answer. Yeah. What I just put on my camera lens, oh, that's just a clip-on loop. You can buy them for, they're meant for phones, but you can do them. So it looks like this. This is from, I keep forgetting, Miniso, I think. This was, I don't know, 12 bucks or something. You clip it on, right? So it typically goes on a phone camera. This happens to have a macro lens on it. But I also have a fisheye lens, which I now feel I should put on to show you what that looks like. The nice thing about this one is it even has light. So you can actually light up what you're looking at. Not perfect. There are lenses with better quality. But the advantage is, I used to just hold up loops against this, but that moves, and this just clips on. It's brilliant. Let's do the fisheye. Oh my goodness, and then see what that does and how that looks. Why can't I screw this on? What's going on here? This is a double. Oh yes, I have to screw sorry. I have to put that on the macro lens, I think. Okay, so now we're just fooling around. You ready for this? I haven't tried this, so I don't know what this is going to be like. Whoa! Whoa, it's like we're in a dream, man. Whoa. It's like brains, man. Whoa. Okay, I'm going to take that off now. So sorry, but you asked. So yeah, you can get this from all kinds of, Aloe Clip is a famous one. And, anyway, there are multiple companies that make something like this. All right, what else do we have? Will Pineda be as innovative and popular as Visconti? I feel Visconti has wavered in its direction. Yeah, I feel that way too. This is, of course, an empirical question. We'll have to wait and see. But given that Dante Del Vecchio was the creative mind of Visconti, who then moved to Pineda, I wouldn't be surprised if Pineda will now become more innovative. I think the issue with Visconti is that it's a bit of a hit or miss thing. I think some of the pens they make are fantastic, really nice. Other pens are a bit ludicrous. And what is ludicrous to me may be really nice to other people, right? But yeah, I think that's their way of doing things. Hopefully innovation in nib design will lead to the return of vintage quality flex nibs. Yes, everybody wants to have flex. So I think that is something people are working on. So far, again, I haven't seen a perfect recreation. Mont Blanc got pretty close. Not the same. But yeah, so I think that is something that the people are demanding. They want vintage flex again. When did your fascination with fountain pens start? in a nutshell, we were given fountain pens in school, primary school, and we learned how to write. First a pencil, then a fountain pen. That kind of started it. But then what really got me excited in the hobby, because I had a couple of fountain pens. I was in university when I was in university, last year of high school, and then into university. And then I started to work on my PhD, and in 2009, and in 2010, my grandfather passed away, and he left me his fountain pens, a Parker set. And I kind of researched that online. That was my October, yeah, that was my Christmas break. And I found all kinds of resources. Like I found Brian Goulet's videos, and I found the Fountain Pen Network, and I learned more about pens. I didn't know anything about pens. I just used them. So I learned what a converter was, and what a gold nib is, and what bottle ink and good paper, all those things. And that kind of got me started. And then I learned more about it, and I got more pens, better pens. And that's kind of it. That's it. Yeah. Then maybe I have very long videos on YouTube called Personal Questions, I think, and I probably go into a bit more detail. But that's the story in a nutshell. I should get a hat saying "Hey there." Yeah, I probably should. Given that this is Alberta, it should probably be a cowboy hat, something Stetson-like, I think. Also with lights, or little Christmas lights on it. Just thinking out loud. The pen world seems in the midst of a period of centralization. Jaffa and ASC run 1 million brands between them. Parker and Waterman are now made by the same factories. It's going to be bad for the consumer. Yeah, I think it's nice if you have more choice, but I also think that it's always wise, I think, to look for light in the darkness. And I think that even though these big companies are doing that, I see small companies popping up like mushrooms, as we say. Go to any pen show and you will see pen makers, small scale pen makers who make beautiful pens that you've never heard of. And you see them more and more. And this is the thing. I remember back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show. No, that's another one. In 2010, I got involved with, well, no, I think it was 11 maybe. Must have been 11. I wasn't even on YouTube in 2010. So in 2011, probably early 2012. I love people who tell the story and they can't remember the time. 2012, may have been 2005. It was 2005 or 2012. 2013. It was, I think it was 2012. I got involved with Fountain Pen Geeks at the time. And at that point, you had Brian Gray of Edison Pens, and he launched Edison Pen Company. I wasn't there for that. That was already a company when I started to get into pens. And he made these really attractive acrylic pens. And I don't want to say he was the first, because I can't really say that, but he was among the first to do that with those nice, fancy, multicolored acrylics. But then since then, you have so many, I'm inclined to say dozens of these companies now. Some big. Edison is bigger now. But people like single people who like, I mean, like what do you call it? Not, I mean, I don't mean unmarried, but I mean like a single person making those pens in their attics, making everything. And I think that's really cool. So I think there is that movement too towards there also. You see this with I'm not into this because, as I said, I don't drink, but you see this with beer. You have the big beer companies, but then, or breweries, I should say. You see how little I'm into this. Then you got all these tiny little, the craft beers and a little this and a little that. I think it's the same thing with fountain pens. You have massive companies, but you also have many, many small companies that are really pushing back and that are really carving out a piece of the market for themselves. Or take Schoen Design. I was really, Ian sent me one of those pens. I was really pleasantly surprised. Really high quality, nice pen. And I think that's really cool. But in my mind, a pen of that caliber can easily compete with any of the big guys because it is equally well made, good fit and finish, properly designed, works really well. You know, so that's really neat. So because otherwise I'll get the question. That's Schoen, S-C-H-O-N Design, D-S-G-N. Check them out. You know, so that's, I think, another development. That was a good question. About the noodless pen comment, throw it out. You were kidding, right? No, it's a noodless pen. Like this is what they do. Like they some work, some don't. I've had noodless pens that no matter what you do to them, they won't write. Well, I spent hours and hours setting nibs and feeds, it just won't work. Well, then it's crap, and you throw it out. So that's just the yeah. No, it's not meant to be mean, but I mean, like, at some point, it's not worth spending hours and hours and hours on a pen that was clearly never designed to actually write. Why don't you do any collabs with other YouTubers? Sometimes, but just never really happened. I mean, it's not that I'm against it, but yeah. There is Series Nibbage. Aziza and I were thinking of restarting the Series Nibbage again. I have to figure out how, but we will. Oh, that's good input, Ellen. The pricing of ink cartridges is colloquially called the razor and blade pricing model. Yes, whether it's the actual blades that are expensive. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Would you ever sell your King of Pen with the King Eagle nib? Well, it's not actually my pen, it's Aziza's pen. So you have to ask her. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. Yeah. Between the ASC Bologna Extra, the Wall Eversharp Deco Band, the big ones, and the Visconti Opera Master, which is larger? I don't have a Wall Eversharp Deco Band to show you, but my money is on the Bologna Extra because that is a really big pen. It's for sure bigger than the Opera. Bologna Extra, making sure the cap is there. Opera Master. Well, actually, roughly the same size, but now I want to say the pen, uncapped, is a little longer on the Bologna Extra. Maybe I'm wrong about that too. There's a little difference. It's not huge, but there is a little difference. The Wall Eversharps are mainly stocky. They are not nearly as long in my recollection as the Bologna Extras, or something like this in length, but girthier. Okay. What shall we say? What else do we have? Which is a better writer? I don't know. That depends on your preference. Like, they're very different pens, right? Like the Bologna Extra has the Magic Flex nib. The Deco Band, you have 2 flex options. The Visconti Opera Master has a plethora of nibs. So they've been launched with palladium nibs, with gold nibs. So it really depends. That really depends. I can't answer that. Over scrolled. I'm sorry. It's really not easy to scroll on this. Yes. Typewriters, mechanical typewriters, never got into that. With all due respect, people do. I just never got into that. Would the larger nib size change how stiff the nib is? That we've talked about, the smaller size of the tines. Okay, and then we had more about the Lamy 2000. So it's wet with the Lamy blue, which is interesting because there's actually a fairly dry ink. But even after cleaning, Visconti blue Shizuku are making the pen very dry. Yeah, that is quite exceptional in my mind because again, the Shizuku inks are lubricated. So it's strange that those make that pen dry, whereas dry ink makes it wet. We may be in a parallel universe at this point. I'm not sure. Again, this could be a matter of maybe discuss that with the Nibmeister, who may want to have a look at the feed if there's anything going on there. All right. Reverend James Morley has joined us. Hello back. Why are ebonite feeds more favorable than plastic? Is there any characteristic of ebonite feeds that makes the writing experience better or make the feed last longer? I'm not sure about lasting longer. I have once read some sort of chemical analysis, which I'm not going to reproduce here for the simple fact I can't remember all the details, but there was a point about conductance being better with an ebonite feed than with a plastic feed. ink is conducted better, flows better as a result of that, and you have more pleasant writing experience. And to be honest, that has been my experience. I have seen plastic feeds that would just not conduct ink, and even if you clean them and you scrub them, they just don't really conduct ink. It's very rare, obviously. I haven't really had that with ebonite, so I always like ebonite. Another advantage of ebonite is that you can heat set it. So if the nib of the feed become misaligned, you can heat up the feed. It was mentioned earlier, and I agree with hot water is a little safer than open flame. They used to do open flames back in the day, but you can warm it up, and the ebonite, you can then push it against the nib properly, hold it for a bit, cool it down, and typically it stays in place because it has memory, whereas plastic does not really. That will just bend out of shape again. So that's usually another reason to prefer ebonite. As to it lasting longer, I don't necessarily think that's really a thing, but I haven't tested it. I've never had a plastic feed like be destroyed over time or something though, but maybe other people have. I don't know. What else do we have? Mr. Armstrong from Pen Habit is close to hitting 50,000 subscribers 2 years after retiring. Do you think there's a general upsurge in pen interest? Yeah, I think there is, and I see it. Like you keep seeing new people being attracted to fountain pens. I recently helped convert a colleague who was interested in pens. The first one's always free. And it works pretty well, but often people also really like it. And there's also people who say, yeah, it's just not for me. But people who are diligent, who understand they have to clean the pen, have to ink it up, they're okay with all that. I think it's really a thing. And I think that pens, I think in overall, there's this sort of resurgence of going back to analog things like typewriters we just talked about, and these kinds of things. Fountain pens are part of that, and I think people will keep doing that, which is also important, because if we don't have a new influx of people using them, then fountain pens will disappear, because if there's no demand, there's no market. Okay. Do you have suggestions for a good pen holder? What do you mean by pen holder? You mean like a desk pen holder? Or do you mean... Yeah, that's all I can come up with right now. There is the pen guard, I want to say. They make a thing that you can stick to your desk, you can remove it again. That's not bad. Okay. How many pens do you have? Sorry, I'm just reading. I'm just trying to scan through comments, because some people just say hello, right? So I'm just trying to see if that's something I can answer. How many pens do I own? 24, 28. That doesn't really count. I'm gonna go with low 30s, something in the low 30s. Again, I get this question a lot. People seem to have this idea that I own thousands of pens. Absolutely not, and that's not what I want either. I have a very, very carefully selected set of pens that I really love, and beyond that, I don't get anything, except of course for the mystery pen that's on the way. You haven't figured it out yet, so I have to keep prodding. Okay. Super. Okay. Wait, I just scroll. Just a bit of info. The Super Flexi nib from Santini is comparable to the FA 18K nib from Pilot. Yes. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. How can I apply for a postdoc program in Canada? Well, you have to find a supervisor, and you have to have money, typically, because a lot of these things are you fund it. So you write the grant application, and you bring in the money. There are also some positions that are advertised, but for that you need to look on academic job websites, I would say. I can tell you this is not going to be a massively easy thing. Like I would say you probably have a below 10 or below 5% chance of actually landing something. I'm just being realistic, right? I don't mean to discourage you, but don't think that it's a matter of you have a 90% success rate. Something you probably won't. What is your opinion on vintage pens? I have a bunch of vintage Swans and an Noto, and I find them quite nice and very nice designs, and in some cases extremely good line variation. Yeah, I think they're all of those things, but they've never appealed to me. I'm a real user. I want something that's very reliable, that's very robust, I can take with me. I don't have to worry about it breaking. So I never really got into vintage pens. I have many advantages. The flex nibs would be the best, but no, it's not really for me. Is the pen world returning to the atelier of old? That there are no Esterbrook-like makers with the 500 people long production lines left. No, I agree. There are a lot of one-man show brands. I think so. Yeah, it kind of ties into what we talked about earlier. I think that is more the future. I think it is almost impossible to come up with a 500-person factory for fountain pens and make that sustainable, right? Plus, a lot of things are mass-produced now, injection molded, etc., are no longer really handcrafted. Can we put an ebonite feed on a pen that came with a plastic feed? If so, where do we find compatible ebonite feeds? Theoretically, yes, but that's the big issue. It has to fit, and that's not always easy because often I found plastic feeds are a different shape, a bit flatter. Ebonite feeds tend to be rounder. Is this always the case? No. Is it often the case? Yes. You have to find something that fits. Where do you find something that fits? I don't know. That really depends on the pen. There is a company, and I'm really blanking on the name. They sell ebonite feeds modified for specific pens. So, for example, you can say, I know it's because Aziza has one. I have a Namiki Falcon, and I don't like the plastic feed. I want an ebonite feed, and then they have a list of like this feed will fit an Namiki. But this is utterly useless for me to say because I don't remember the name. If anyone does, Flexi feeds, I really don't remember the name. But if you Google this, you probably find it. And they're very good. So I can recommend them because they actually do fit. Okay. Where was I? Can you do a show on psychology of collecting? Well, I have a video on collecting versus accumulating, which generated a lot of anger from people who were described as accumulators, but they claimed they're collectors. So you can always check that out, but I could do more about that probably. Yeah. Flexible Nib Factory. Borna. Sorry, I didn't read far enough. Yes, that's it. Thank you. That's it. Got it. They're the ones. Because and it does work. So I would give it a shot because it can increase increase the functionality of the pen. Because Aziza had a lot of issues with the plastic feed of her Falcon, and the ebonite feed was way better, much more steady inflow. Yeah. Okay. What else do we have? Is there a possibility that you'll be making videos or lectures on Carl Gustav Jung in the future? I hadn't considered it. I would have to read up on Jung more because Jung is very specific and is kind of non-scientific in many ways, just like Freud and the other psychoanalysts. So I would really have to think about what I have to say about Jung. But it's an interesting theory, for sure. So we shall see what we can do. I'm loving all this nib content. I care about performance much more than swirly plastic. Well, yeah, I understand that. And that's a very important thing for me as well. I am fairly disgusted. I'm just speaking out now with the mass of pens that I have received for review that don't write. Even a big Italian company, well represented in America, at some point I had a discussion with the distributor who said, yeah, thanks to your reviews, we found out that people use our pens to write with. I don't even know what to tell you. I mean, it's a fountain pen. What did you expect they use them for? But that is an issue for me as well. And that's what I mean when I said I have a small collection. But here's the thing. All these pens get used. And they're not all $1,000 pens. Some are. But I also, like I said, I've whipped this out a few times now. I'll show you again. But like this is not. This is I know as well under $200. And I don't remember the exact price. I want to say something like 110, 120, but I could be off because this was a limited edition. It was a bit more expensive than the regular aluminium edition. I like using this. I like my Opus 88 Omar, a great pen, very comfortable. So it doesn't have to be expensive, but it does have to write. And so, yeah, every pen I has does write. And if it didn't write, then it was sent to a nib meister to make it right. Because I'm the same way. So I understand what you mean. I do like good lookers. I do. It's not vanity, but I mean, I do think this is a beautiful pen. And it is also a great writer. But I also have pens that are much more plain. Nothing comes to mind right now. No, really nothing comes to mind. This is not a beautiful looker, but again, it's a solid writer. So, there is that. Okay. Bock versus Jowo nibs, which do you prefer? I have a mild preference for Jowo because I often find them a little wetter. I found that some Bock nibs can be a little dry. But that's it. But then for the number 8 nibs I have, they're almost exclusively Bock, and they've all been pretty good, actually. So, we don't know. Ew. How to know if that Parker Sonnet is fake if it's a rollerball pen? If the price is too good to be true, then it's fake. Like if someone offers a Parker Sonnet for $5, then it's fake, because that is not possible. Talking of pen innovation, I'd love to see Banu make a pen with an LED light inside. That sure would be pretty. I'll pass it on. They're pretty open. And of course, the issue is you also have the battery issue. I don't know if they could really, but I agree that would be pretty sweet. And they are pretty up for funky stuff. So, which is your Akaman ink? I don't understand the question. It's SBREBROWN is the name of the ink. And it is sold through Akaman in their bottles. Nice. I thought I saw a brain labeled Abby Normal on your shelf with a fisheye lens. Yeah, well, I have some. I have a model of a diseased brain, which is not necessarily a very happy thing to look at, but yeah, it exists. How have you been doing in these perilous times? I think I've been doing pretty well. I try to keep busy and do things and meet people where I can, either safely, socially distanced, or online. And that works. That works pretty well. So I try. The way I see it, Visconti is making art instead of making pens. Yeah, that's a way to look at it. And some of the pens are very usable, right? Take something like the Michelangelo or the Van Gogh pens or the Rembrandt. All very nice. Interesting that I do say Van Gogh, but I don't say Rembrandt. Anyway, those are functional pens in my mind. And they're quite pretty too. Yeah. Anyway. I really like your attitude about pens. I'm disturbed when people start calling pens copies of some other pens, especially when the pens are not made in the West. I feel as long as people do not try to pass off their pens as pens made by someone else, it's fine. Yeah, it really depends. I mean, some pens are blatant copies of other pens. It's clear that they're reproduced millimeter for millimeter. But it is always a discussion to have. I also feel that if you're making pen A, and then in China they make pen A, but it's $5 instead of $500. No, I don't know if I've seen that. That's a really copy. But like, take the Lamy Safari, it's been copied. Well, the patent has expired. I don't know if I would do that. I don't know if I would really try to copy a pen like that. But if Lamy offers it for $25 and China offers it for $5, where will people go? I'm not saying either way one thing is good or one is bad, because it's a very complicated discussion, right? They can offer it cheaper. And often the fit and finish are quite good. So it's a very difficult discussion. I struggle with a lot in many ways. You're a doctor in what field? Yeah, I am a doctor, but I'm not a useful doctor. I'm a PhD doctor. So I'm a psychologist by training in the field of cognitive psychology / cognitive neuroscience, because it's very hard to distinguish what I did my PhD in. But officially, cognitive psychology. Okay, what else do we have? I'm going to scroll down. What else do we have? Xizo pens. Yeah, that's true, Sue. Xizo makes quite nice pens. Not necessarily super inexpensive, but sorry, their lacquer work is very good. The finish are very good. So I do like that brand too. I think they've made some nice, very solid pens, which I think are very nice. Yes. Which brand of paper do you recommend for fountain pen, preferably low cost? Rhodia. Rhodia is nice. May have to shop around a little bit, but here, where I live in Red Deer, there is not a massive selection of papers, but even Michael's, the art store, has Rhodia paper, so it's nice. Plus, Michael's always has those 40. God, they send you a lot of emails, but they have the like 40% off, 30%, etc. So when I do that, then I stock up on some paper. I think Rhodia is very nice, very smooth. Typically works well, doesn't bleed through much. So that's good paper. Also paper that is really good and that I think is even cheaper, but I don't know if you can necessarily get it where you are, is Oxford, which is actually, if I remember correctly, a German paper. A bit confusing, but Oxford is fantastic, super smooth, coated, and very, very fountain pen friendly. So that's also, and that was, I think I bought a notepad for €2.50 or something. So almost nothing, and very good paper. Here in the UK, we have the Worcester Pen Company, which has some wonderful materials. I'll check them out. Haven't tried them yet, but we'll look at it. Yeah. Have I checked out the TWSBI 589 Prussian Blue? No, I haven't, but I will check. I shall. Okay. Diamine Majestic Blue is actually a dangerous ink. Could the ink leave a stain in the nib? I have never had issues with Diamine ink that was permanent. Everything always cleaned out. Some are a bit, anything that's very saturated is something you have to be a bit careful about. And if the Majestic Blue is the one I'm thinking of, that is a more saturated, darker blue. Clean your pens. Clean your pens properly, and I don't think you should really have an issue. But yeah, some of them are a bit more saturated. But again, I've never had any permanent issues with any Diamine. Have I come across the Ackerman pump pen? Yeah, so for the record, this is not Dutch Ackerman. This is I think it's a US company. I've seen them, but I've not held one. Yeah. What do you think about Montegrappa pens? I think they're quite nice if they write. I've had a bunch that were so dry that they were unusable out of the box, and unfortunately not one, but multiple pens. So that has been my experience. I know that they were working on that nib issue, and I want to say the most recent one I used was a bit better in that regard. So that's that. But this ties into our earlier discussion of if I buy a pen, then I buy it to write with, right? Not as a desk ornament. So it was a fairly consistent thing in the pens I used, right? That they were very dry. Isn't ebonite slightly porous where ABS is not at all porous, given it potentially holds ink rather than having it sit on the surface? Ebonite feeds would possibly contribute to the consistent flow. Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. Again, I haven't made a giant analysis of this, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I tried changing Jowo nibs with Bock ones without changing the feed on my TWSBI and Faber-Castell, but they either write bad or dried out after one day. Anything I can do to adjust the nib to the feed? Not really, because it's plastic feed, so you can't really heat set them, and they're different nib manufacturers, so they're not the same size, so they're unlikely to fit, and therefore it won't work, right? If there's even the slightest gap between a nib and a feed, then it's not going to write properly. So you could send it to a nibmeister, but I don't know if you really want to do that for TWSBIs, etc. Again, it's different, right? You don't necessarily take the engine from one make of car and then put it in another car and expect it to work flawlessly. You know what I mean? Like it's different parts, so they may not fit properly, etc. Brass sheets used to floss the tines or to slide between nib and feed. If I floss the tines to make the pen wetter, there's no going back, right? Does making it wetter make the line broader? That's a very good question. Yes, you make a nib wetter by opening the tines. Now, you're not going from this to this, because then it won't write anymore. But you could go with a microscopic increase. If you put a brass shim of 0.0002 inches in between the tines, they will widen a bit. So strictly speaking, I suppose your line will become wider by 0.0002 of an inch, which is not a lot of inches. The wetter you make it, but you have to be very careful, because as soon as you end up with something in a V shape with the tines pointing outwards, your ink flow will be hampered. So it has to remain an inverted V, right? It may become a little broader, and I've had that in the past, but I would say often, unless you take it really far, it's barely noticeable. Is it a one-way street? No, you can make it back. You can go back, because you can put the tines back together again, right? And then it becomes drier again. So I wouldn't really worry about it. Is there a pen you regret selling? We talked about that. Mystery pen, Triangolo. Nope, it's not that. If someone wanted to send you a pen to keep, not necessarily for review, although it would be nice, how could they do that? Yeah, I know. I have your emails, and I have been so overflowing with emails. And usually email is best. We should pick up that conversation again. Yeah, that's it. Email. Is there a big difference between a palladium nib and a gold nib? Yes. One is palladium and one is gold. I would say that's the biggest difference. I'm sorry, I'm not being mean. But the two different materials, right? So that is a big difference, yes. And they have different properties. So I have seen some palladium nibs that are very rigid. I've seen some palladium nibs that are very soft, and I've seen very little consistency in palladium nibs. But having said that, yeah, they will feel different. A good palladium nib is an absolute joy to write with, because there's a very soft feeling to it, which is really quite nice. That I really like. So I like them. A gold nib, yeah, as we discussed, that really depends. That was a good point earlier. It depends on the alloy, right? So I have seen gold nibs that are so rigid that they will not give you any line variation whatsoever. I've seen gold nibs that are so soft they're basically semi-flex. So yes, there is a big difference. The only way to figure it out is to try them out, right? And if you don't have a pen shop in your area, maybe there's a pen club. If there's not a pen club, maybe you can at some point go to a pen show. But that's the only way to really get a feeling for the difference and what you like, because it's very personal. Again, I have some pens with palladium nibs that I love. I had some pens with palladium nibs that I hated. So very difficult. Very different. Yes. Thank you, Simon. Flexible Nib Factory. Yeah, I know we figured it out, but yeah, I don't know. It's a really easy name. I don't know why I couldn't figure it out. Anyway. And hello, by the way. Nice, nice, nice. What else do we have? Yeah, good further information. I'll just read it in case people hadn't seen that. More about the palladium nib. Annabelle, I mentioned before, from Appelboom, the nib mistress. I think we really should go for nib. It's Nib Meisterin, or it's going to be nib mistress, but I think that nib mistress, yeah, that's where we should take this. It does evoke some sort of leather association, but let's go with nib mistress. I just like the term. Fixing a palladium nib for me, and she's also a goldsmith. She told me that palladium is very different in behavior than gold's different molecular structure. Yeah, I could see that. And again, it's weird. Maybe we should spend a little bit of time talking about it. It's weird that you can have a palladium nib that is completely rigid, and a nib, the same type of nib from the same company, it's also palladium, and that is incredibly soft and flexy. Because you would assume that cut the same way, right? They're the exact same shape. You would think that the alloy would be the same because it's made for the same company. The other issue is palladium nibs are 23 karat. Well, that means there's only 1 carat left for another material in an alloy. 24 carat is pure. So there's almost nothing else in there. And yet there's a huge difference. So the one thing I came up with is that if the nibs are exactly the same, maybe one is a bit thinner. Because if a nib is thinner, then it typically also is a bit more flexy. So maybe they varied with the thickness of the nibs. That's the only thing I can come up with. Yeah. What I meant was the neurobiology of collecting. Ah, yes, we can probably talk about that at some point. Yes. Once upon a time, I wasn't schizophrenic, but I was forced to take haloperidol. Yeah, it's an antipsychotic. So there are other reasons to take that beyond schizophrenic, but usually if there's some sort of a psychotic behavior that took me longer than I expected. Psychotic behavior, hallucinations or delusions or other things that, like cognitive unrest, which can also be obsessive thoughts, for example. Then something like haloperidol can be a good thing to take. Yeah. Okay. Oh, we have another one. Aiming for the prize. Mystery pen. Could it be Bexley Golden Age Triangles Arco Verde celluloid? It could very well be, but it's not. I'm so sorry. I'm having too much fun with this. Thank you for playing again. I use all my pens and I take them to work. I've broken one pen at work, but that's life. This is true. Yeah, me too. I don't know if I've broken one. Yeah, I've broken one at work. Yeah, I have. Edison. I dropped the cap, then stepped on it. This is not wise. You just got a Pilot Custom 742 with an FA nib gold trim. It's glorious. Soft and lovely to write with. Beautiful flex. Yeah, they can be nice. The FA nibs can definitely be very nice. Yeah. Okay, the same question is now, I think I've been asked 6 times. Have I come across the Ackermann pump pen? Yes, please bear in mind there is a delay in me seeing these comments. So you don't have to post it 15 times. I will get to it at some point, okay? I know you didn't know that, but now you do. There's inexpensive and inexpensive. I cannot afford a pen over $200. That's fine. There are many options that are absolutely fantastic. I may have mentioned this before. It does. I don't know if it's your flavor in pens, but a pen that I really cannot speak highly enough of, I think, is the Faber-Castell Emotion. Again, it's not for everyone. It's quite heavy. It's a bit stocky and girthy, but the steel nibs on those are stellar, absolutely stellar. Some of the nicest nibs, period, I've ever used. So maybe that's something you want to check out. But again, I don't know if it's your taste, really. There's also the all black stealth version. That nib is a bit more feedbacky, so be careful because they coat the tipping of the nib too. But the chrome colored nibs they do, colored nibs, are very nice. Okay, maybe something you want to check out. Just an idea. I've never had an issue with Japanese pens. In my experience, they all write exquisitely. I wanted to say it that way, exquisitely out of the box. Yeah, they're exquisite pens, and I mainly agree. I have found Japanese pens to be reliable and quite nice. Yeah, very good quality. And that's I mentioned it earlier. That cross peerless. That's the moral of the Darth Vader pen. It has a sailor nib, and again, wonderful nib. I have also, of course, maybe I should show that. Showed you that before. That is an authentic sailor nib. Whoops, it's not made anymore. The cross point, which is 2 nibs welded on top of each other, and which makes for a beautiful, you can see why it's called cross point, because it's like a cross, right? Cross section shape. Beautiful, super wide, fantastic nib. Sorry. Does Pelican use Bock nibs? I thought they made their nibs in-house, but I don't know if they still do. Visconti use Bock nibs, and I don't know if they have gone back to in-house. So I'm sorry. I feel like this is the type of thing that I should know, but I don't. Yeah, sorry. What is this stream about? I just got here. It's about using nuclear physics to save the world. So far, we've come up with about 10 or 15 solutions that will create world peace and end poverty all over. Given that it only took us 5 minutes to do that, we have now moved on to talking about fountain pens and related paraphernalia. I think that's the best way to put it. Fountain pens, I think, is what this is about. What else do we have? I was only kidding. I was only kidding. What else do we have? True. The price of the small titanium pen bounced around. True. How would a psychologist raise a genius? Well, you start off with the genetic material. Because I think intelligence is a bit of nature and a bit of nurture. But given that the nature is there, you have intelligent parents, for example, I would encourage a lot of learning. Going out into the world and seeing things, but also learning. Albert Einstein, often considered a genius, couldn't thrive in school and came up with relativity by wandering the Italian countryside as a late teenager. So, or at least, was that relativity? I guess that was the foundation of his theories of relativity. So I would encourage studying and learning and reading and doing those kinds of things and making people think about multiple disciplines, not just mathematics, but also a bit of physics and a bit of chemistry and a bit of social science, a bit of humanities. I think that's the best way to do it. Okay. So if a pen-only discussion, I'm interested in biological versus how cognition affects physical connections, quantum perception and physics. Oh, interesting. Well, that's an interesting thing to think about. I have to give that one some thought. Yeah. I believe Oxford is French. You know what? I think you're right. Yes. What's that name? Yeah. I want to say Amerlam, but that's not it, because now I think I'm confusing hammer. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not German. I think it may well be French, or is French now, at least. Yes, I agree. Solved. Thank you. What else do we have? So I'm just scrolling. The titanium pen was on the website at $70 and at 100 US. So if you got a special price of 70, that would be about 110 Canadian. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. I exclusively use Nudeless X Feather and haven't really had to clean one of my pens in literally like 3 years. Well, that's excellent. Saves time, doesn't it? Is the snap-on cap of the Schaefer Prelude durable? I think so. Any type of cap can wear out, right? Whether it's the threads or the snap stuff, but I would call it pretty reliable. What else? Would the plastic cleaning thing that comes with a pilot parallel work between the tines of another pen? Quite possibly. Not for increasing the flow, because it's too soft to spread the tines, but for cleaning, I would assume so, yes. Van Ness now has SBREBROWN for sale in 60. Oh, that's awesome. Nice. Yep. Am I still confined in Alberta? I am confined to the extent that, I mean, I live here, yes. They are slowly, if this was a question about more COVID type stuff, they are relaxing rules here. Whether that is entirely sensible, I'm not convinced yet. Because I see a lot of people now on like playing sports together, etc. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we shall see. All right. Do I or Aziza plan to attend the Chicago Pen Show in September? I'm not sure there will be a Chicago Pen Show in September. I really doubt there will be pen shows this year, but theoretically, if there would be, I will not be there. Aziza, I don't know, maybe. Annabelle prefers nib specialist. Yeah, but that's not the image, right? The nib mistress has this sort of image of her like whipping nibs into shape. That's what I was. Anyway, I'll stop that. But yes, she is a nib specialist, though. I'll easily admit that. Greetings from Italy. Hello, greetings back. Okay, what else do we have? My Faber-Castell Basic is my best nib. So smooth. Yeah, that's what I mean. They are amazing. So really, I really would check out the Emotion. See if it's, again, I don't know if it's for you. It is a very specific design. Not everybody likes it, but I find it quite comfortable. And again, superb nibs. Really, really good. I have Emotion Stealth, and I find the nib fine, but a bit lifeless. Maybe I'll have to find a chrome one. Yeah, or if you're comfortable doing it, you could take a very fine micro mesh, right? Like a 12,000 grit or something, and very gently polish the nib, and that will polish off the tipping material. Sorry, no, not that. It will polish off the coating on the tipping material. You polish off the tipping material, you don't have a nib left. You would have a very interesting kick-ass italic. But you could try that. But if you don't want to do that, you can pick up a replacement nib. I was surprised that anyone would coat nib tipping. It feels kind of counterintuitive to me. But I understand that. Just dip the whole thing probably. But there definitely is a massive difference in the writing of the coated nib and the regular Emotion nibs. It makes a big difference. So if you can find a chrome, then yeah. Is your mystery pen bespoke, handmade? It is. How does one justify a purchase like the Namiki Emperor? It's like $2,000, man. Think of the goddamn children. Yeah, I know. I understand. Yes, I understand. For me, the justification was that I really liked it. Yeah, that's it, really. How can you justify it? Well, you look at certain things. It's a bigger pen, one-way shut-off valve, Arushi lacquer. That all adds to the price. Massive nib, biggest nib I own. Is it worth $2,000 penny for penny? No. Which pen is? None. So I really understand. I wasn't trying to make fun of you or something. It's a really fair question. It's a supremely comfortable pen that I really enjoy using, that I really enjoy writing with. So, yeah, I fully understand. This is not for everyone. And I mean, there's also people who would never, ever, ever purchase that, even if they were given, here's $2,000, spend on any pen you like. They would still not buy an Namiki Emperor. No, I understand that. That's because tastes differ, and that's normal and, in fact, very healthy. And I think that's exactly how it should be. For me, it was worth it, and I love using that pen. What else? Do we use a different part of our brain for recalling numbers than for recalling words? To a degree, I would say yes. Now, it depends a little bit on how you would formulate that. If you're talking about actual recall, right? Recall is a memory thing. So if I say, I don't know, recall the number 5, picture the number 5, then what are you picturing? Are you picturing the Arabic symbol that we use for 5? Or are you picturing 5 dots? Or are you picturing the concept of 5? So that's really a bit difficult. That would be when as a psychologist, when you say recall, and that's kind of what you talk about. If it is a matter of, do you use different parts of your brain for language and arithmetic, then I would say yes, that is likely at least somewhat different part. But if you talk about numbers, so if I say 5 plus 5 equals 10, I know this because at our age, you know this, right? 5 equals 10. There's nothing involved, no computation involved. Then it becomes just language. But if it's just language, then it's a language area and not necessarily a number area. But complicated, isn't it? That's because the brain is so complicated. In a much broader sense, most people use their left hemisphere for many things, but language is located on the left, predominantly, a little bit on the right. And on the right, you have more of your creative stuff, and you have more functions that deal with spatial insight and, say, navigation. And like if I ask you now, how do you get from your house to the nearest supermarket, then you can sort of make that mental map. That's more a right hemisphere thing. But in some people, that's flipped. And they have language predominantly on the right and visual spatial stuff on the left. And that may have something to do with handedness. But then there's also left-handed people who are completely idiosyncratic and have different, like some left, some right. Really complicated. Really complicated. So here's something that I find really cool. Even though in the typical person, average person, language is on the left, music perception is typically on the right, predominantly. And that's really interesting. Now imagine you have a brain injury, for example, a stroke. That's on the left, and you lose your ability to speak. You can do speech therapy to try and recover as much speech as possible. And often it turns out that what helps pretty well is music therapy, for example, singing. And that sounds weird. But now when you think about it, that music is more on the right. If the stroke has affected the left side of the brain, that's kind of neat that you could maybe use the right to help you regain that language capacity, because the music and the singing is more on the right and not on the left, and the right is fine. Whoa! I think that's really cool. That stuff, I find that really exciting. What else do we have? What else do we have? I love your sense of humor. I think humor is what we have. And it's very important, even when things are dark and there's very serious stuff going on outside. I think it is really important that we try to keep our sense of humor, because if we don't, then things become really dreary and really bland and really upsetting and unsettling. So that's why I think it's important. Okay. What else do we have? Any recommendation for user-serviceable pens like the Noodler's pens, but more expensive? Conid comes to mind. You can take them apart completely, but the price does increase by a factor 10 for a Noodler's pen, I think. Okay. Did the Parker 51 ever have a plastic cap as a model or as a prototype? I don't know. I don't have an immediate association with that. So my answer is going to be no. But I'm not a Parker 51 expert, so I really qualify that. How does psychologists treat fountain pen addiction? Say, congratulations. You made it. Get rid of all your ballpoints. Who's a good nib master these days? Well, there's many. Mike Masayama, the nib grinder, the nib. Why do I keep forgetting Dan Smith's thing? The nib. Okay. I'm sorry, Dan. Dan Smith. Nib ... is good. The nib grinder is good. Mike Masuyama is good. Independence as a whole, as a host. Is Oxford made by Claire Fontaine? No, it is not. No, I don't think so. It would make sense because they make a lot of papers, but like I don't think they are the same mother company. Okay, I think we have about 5 minutes left because I'm trying to keep these to about 2 hours. Hi, I have an Omas Emotica with a titanium nib. The rubber covering of the pen is melting. You know of a solution to preserve the rubber? I do not. I have had that with much cheaper pens, so that was not a big deal. I actually do not know. I don't know how you can do that. I'm sure there's a way, but it's beyond my knowledge. Is it possible for a lefty like me to use a fountain pen? Absolutely. There's in fact a large number of left-handed people, but you may want to try something that's a little finer in nib, a little drier, so you don't, depending on how you, if you're an overwriter or underwriter, you don't wipe out what you write. But I have a video on left-handed fountain pen use, recorded with my friend Sinister Peter. So maybe watch that because he is a left-handed user. He goes into some tips and tricks, which I can't because I'm a right-handed user. Does it make sense to buy from US retailers when you can get pens for much, much cheaper from EU retailers such as Applebaum or LCDC? Well, sometimes there's import duties, and there is, of course, an argument to be made for supporting local companies. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people go to where things are cheapest, right? Okay. Do you find inlaid nibs to contribute any meaningful performance characteristics? No. I would say that really is an aesthetic thing. Yeah. Hamelin. It was Hamelin. Yeah. Okay. Hamelin. I'm not entirely insane. Okay. Notice how I said entirely. What else do we have? Yes, I'm sorry. Roger is in a different room. Do I have a favorite contemporary soft fine? Not really, because I'm not really a soft nib user. So not really, to be honest. Okay. What else do we have? Yeah, no, I understand. Like, this person says, when asked, is it worth it in terms of psychology? Like when you buy $2,000 pens, is it worth it? There's also probably a bit of cognitive dissonance reduction. Like I spent $2,000 on a pen. This must be a really good pen. Oh, I really love it, right? There is that for sure, for sure. And I did do a video about something like that at some point about reviewing expensive pens and such. Yeah, yeah. What else do we have? What do you think of associating a color, smell to numbers? Yeah. That's called synesthesia, and that's not fully understood. But yeah, there are people who see colors when they think of certain numbers, or they smell things, or it may be that certain areas of your brain are more strongly connected than in other people. And as a result, every time you see the number 1, you see red. And there's actually very good experimentation on that to show that that really seems to be a thing that affects how you process things cognitively. So that's definitely, it's a real thing. Yes. Have I read Phantoms of the Brain by Dr. Ramachandran? No, I have not. I'll add that to the list because it sounds good. How does a lazy eye affect the brain? Well, quite largely, because if the lazy eye does not provide much input to the brain, and as a result, the pathways are not fully developed, and as a result, if you don't treat that, especially in children, then they can actually lose sight, at least partially in that eye, simply because the input from that eye is not processed by the brain, which is why you then tape off the other eye, so they're forced to use the lazy eye. And that can seriously have severe effects. So it is very important to have that treated. Yes. All right. We have 45 seconds. Now it's been 2 hours. So I'm going to call it a day. There are more questions. The Nib Smith. Yes, thank you. I feel terrible. And it's, oh my God, stupid because his name is Dan Smith. Wow. Okay. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for being here. More questions. I'll be back. Save your questions if they were not answered now. And we'll do them next time. Okay? I thank you all very, very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I really have fun hanging out with these things. So we have about 120 viewers or so. That's a lot. So I think that you enjoy it too. Thank you all very, very much for being here. I'll see you soon. Bye.